Hi, I'm Luke Hanson McDonald, and this is my podcast about family business. Today's guest is the second generation leader of one of the largest operators of buses in Canada. Matthew Cassidy is the president of Coach Atlantic, Maritime Bus, and their most recent acquisition, Ambassatours. Matthew shares the incredible story of how he and his father and his brothers have consolidated the busing industry in Eastern Canada over the last 2 decades. He also shares the struggles he went through when he took over as president a few months before the COVID pandemic. This nearly shut their business down completely, and through pure perseverance, they managed to battle through. Luckily, this made Matthew a much stronger leader and led to some explosive growth within their business. And if you stick around to the end, Matthew shares all about their new acquisition of Ambassatours. He discusses how the deal came together and what their plans are for the future. You're not going to want to miss this one. This is Beyond the Family Business Podcast. Let's jump into it. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do?
So my name is Matthew Cassidy. I am from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and I am the president of Coach Atlantic and Maritime Bus. And as of June 1st, I'm also the president of Ambassadors Cruise with a recent acquisition we made as part of our the Cassidy group.
Awesome. Congratulations on the recent acquisition.
Thank you. It was a great deal. There's a great team with Ambassadors. Dennis Campbell, the majority owner, a longtime family friend, and it's been a great transition so far, and we're really excited to see what we can do with the business going forward.
Yeah, cool. So maybe first, could you explain a bit more about what exactly is your family business and, sort of what's the size of the business? What do you do? That type of thing.
Yeah, so my father, Mike Cassidy, serial entrepreneur, been involved with everything from trucking to agriculture to tire shops along the way. But in 2005, he purchased his first motor coach company, Trius Tours, out of Charlottetown, PEI. There was 20 pieces of equipment and 30 employees at the time, and didn't realize the industry he was really getting into. But really, it was an industry that was really fragmented with a bunch of small players and was in need of consolidation. So he ended up being organically the consolidator of the industry. So over the last 20 years, there's been 20 companies that have been bought, acquired, and kind of pushed together to form Coach Atlantic and Maritime Bus as we see it today. So we have 250. So from 20 pieces of equipment, we have 250 pieces of equipment now, and 30 employees. We're up to 500 employees on the transportation side.
Wow.
So yeah, we do everything we have 4 main divisions. We have a school bus contract in Moncton proper, the Anglophone East School District. So 33 buses a day, moving kids back and forth to school. In Charlottetown, PEI, we do the city transit system. We're the private operator of the city transit system here in Charlottetown, Cornwall, and Stratford. We move just shy of 5,500, 6,000 people a day for transit here, which about 1.7 million passenger fares a year. And that system's been the 20th anniversary of that system will be in September 30th, which is pretty exciting. And then we have our Maritime Bus line run service. So again, 40 communities in Atlantic Canada that get connected daily. And then we have our Coach Atlantic Charter division, which is the biggest of our divisions. And, that's Luke. It's where here's the driver, the tank of fuel, and the vehicle, and where you want to go. So we have inbound tours, we have outbound tours, the groups that we do, the cruise ships that come into port. We do all the busing in Charlottetown and Halifax for the shore excursions, taking people to Peggy's Cove and Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, the Valley out of the Port of Halifax. And then we also do local universities, the Q teams, sports teams. Yeah. We're people moving people on that side of the business. And so, my father started the business. I joined 11 years ago. My brother Steven is also in the business. He joined 7 years ago. My brother Ryan is in the business. He's about 6 years. He started right in September of 2019. So Steven's our CFO. I'm the president. Ryan's our director of people and processes as part of the operations team in Halifax. And I'd be remiss to say we do have a sister as part of the family too. She is definitely the smartest of the bunch. She's a professor of nursing at Dalhousie right now,
Oh,
and yeah, so
cool.
she's outside the business, but yeah, she's a professor of Dalhousie, and it's interesting as much as I joke that she's the black sheep, right? But her research is all about like how do you like is like a change in practices and how you like using evidence base to change healthcare practices and how to make healthcare system more efficient. And I'm like, oh well, you are my sister. Like I just do like, okay, well, how do we do change management and how do we change things to make it better from a business perspective? So she just has a bit more of a yeah healthcare view of it than kind of the capital side of it. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
uh,
My wife is a former nurse, and I always sort of like joke with her that she's actually doing something meaningful with her life, and I'm just,
yeah,
a lowly business person. So
person.
I can appreciate that.
So yeah, then so that's the size of the business. We have offices in Halifax, is our biggest office. Obviously, the biggest city in Atlantic Canada. We have a facility in Moncton and we have a facility in Charlottetown. I live and work out of Charlottetown, but I'm in the other locations on a regular basis.
Very cool. So you're a busy man.
Busy man, a lot going on, but we have a great team.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah. Joe will get to that more down the road. But yeah, great team to be able to make it all work, and a lot of long-term dedicated employees that really buy into who we are and what we do. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Um, just speaking about the sort of founding story and your dad started it off, he's a serial entrepreneur. He got into this business, or a small version of this business. When did the vision start to connect together that, hey, there is a consolidation play here versus just, doing what he was doing at the start?
Do you know what? My dad he says yes until he has to say no. And I think that, when if you called him up today with hey, I think I have a good idea, like he loves making a deal. And I think that it just happened organically. Like one turned into another. And it was all about survival at that time, right? New business, taking on debt, buying new buses, um, buying the business meant, more sales, like hope that it was just kind of that like idea of surely to goodness, if we get more sales, we get more sales. At some point, we will be able, like, we'll be able to turn the corner. And, opposed to trying to do it organically, bit by bit, one customer at a time, like the acquisition piece came up. And, Luke, as a lot of these small businesses, like these acquisitions were like, hey, here's my buses, just get me out of debt and I'll step out of the way. Right. Like these were
Right.
not, a lot of them weren't going concern businesses. They were very much just, okay, hey, get me out of my debt and let me move on type of things. It was, and, I joined the business in 2014, September 2014. So, 10 years, my dad would have 9, 10 years in the business at that point. And, we were starting to turn a corner there in terms of the size and scope of the business. And I never really had a vision of, going through university. I'm a CA by trade. Like when I was coming through university and go through the CA program, I thought I was going to be a partner in a CA firm. Like that's what I
Sure.
was going to do. That's what I thought I was going to do. Kind of realized along the way, like I was working with like, small and medium sized business owners. And I kind of realized I wanted to do that. Like, like I wanted to do my own thing, but I definitely, um, but then I said, like with my father, I said, okay, here's a business. Like it got to that size and scope where, the complexities of it, like, well, do I really want to go start something myself? Or, do I want to go with my father and say, hey, how do we take this thing, put my spin on it with him and kind of turn it into something further from that?
Uh,
So I remember going out for a drive with my dad, and he was building his cottage at the time, and we went to see it. And I said, "Dad, there's two things I want to talk to you about." And he said, "Oh yeah, what are those?" And I said, "Well, um, I think I want to ask Cheryl, my wife, to marry me, and I also want to talk about leaving the accounting firm to join the family business." And he was pretty quick to say, "Well, you can go talk to your mother about the first thing, and you can talk to me about the second thing.
Two good decisions, though. You made
Two
back to
very good
back.
decisions. Two very good decisions in 2014. So yeah, coming up on the 10-year next the end of the month is my 10 year wedding anniversary with my wife.
Oh,
And
congratulations. That's awesome.
yeah, no, she's definitely a big part of why I'm able to do what I do. So it but yeah, no, having that business, like, yeah, so like 2014, and then like Luke, we kind of got to the point where, okay, it went from, okay, we got something, but how do we turn this into something that's sustainable, right? We had enough of a critical mass of a business, but it was still very much like a mom and pop type of business. So how do we like structure a little bit better? What is our more of a, but we had enough, we couldn't change previous to that because we didn't have enough scale. So once we got to that point where we had enough of the business, we could really get into like, okay, well, our capital assets, our fleet planning, our banking relationships. Like, it's a pretty the motor coach business is a pretty interesting space because um, you're taking like all the tough parts of trucking and like equipment and drivers and logistics and breakdowns, and then you're throwing this whole customer service component on it at the
Yeah.
same time, right? And because as I like to say, like our potatoes talk, right? If
Yeah.
if our bus is broken down on the side of the road, like we got to move it because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
people on it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if a load of potatoes is broken down on the side of the road, well, maybe you got yourself a couple hours before you got to figure it out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's complex business, but yeah, like, and then we started to pull 2014, and I started off as like the CFO of the company. That's what I joined because there was a need there. The previous CFO had left, and yeah, I kind of came in and learned the business from the financial side of things, and then bit by bit moved more and more into the operational side of things.
Uh,
And yeah, so no, it really, that like 2014 to 2019 really allowed us to kind of turn that corner of, okay, we got something here. And
right.
okay, how do we make it more sustainable? How do we make the right investments in terms of our fleets to put things in place? What's our fleet
Yep.
replacement strategy? Yeah, to kind of go from there.
And did the experience you had have as a CA, did you work externally before? Like, did you work in another business?
No, well, so graduated from EPI. I went and I worked at the CA firm for 5 years after
Yeah.
graduation.
Okay.
And yeah, so yeah, I worked at the CA firm for 5 years after graduation,
Yeah. Yeah.
before joining the family business.
And do you think
And
that was, it sounds like it was, but do you think that was super valuable perspective to have? You got to see a lot of different small businesses. So when you joined your dad's business, you could sort of take the best of what you saw maybe, or
yeah, I'm a firm believer of like that time allowed me to kind of get my own perspectives, get my own thoughts. And again, I worked outside the family business kind of like through, junior high and high school and different businesses. But yeah, I really enjoyed that time at the accounting firm because, the partners figured out pretty well that I was half intelligent and it was half capable of speaking to business owners. So like I was on a lot of small and medium sized business files, and I would run through the work pretty quickly just to get to the point of the file where I got to talk to the business owners and ask them questions about their business. As to like, why is this up? Why is this down? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? I learned more about different businesses doing that than yeah, it was a great education, great way to get access and behind the scenes of different parts of the business, and that allowed me to. You're right. When I came to my dad's business, I wasn't learning how my dad runs a business. Again, I learned that, but I was also in complement or like to pair that with information or experience I gained on how like other people do things and how like
mm,
there is a different way and how do you kind of take the best of both and bring it together.
right. And before you stepped into the president role, where did you really spend your time that you think was the most, biggest driver of value for the organization?
So, um, two sides of it. The one side was very much around our banking relationships, our financing. Our capital assets are expensive. Motor coaches, back in that time were probably $500 to $550,000. our motor coaches now are $800,000. So we buy 10 to 15 new motor coaches a year now. So our banking relationships are very important. So like once we kind of turn the corners in that time frame of you know um in 2016, 2017, in getting involved with better banking structures really allowed us to drive value, buy more buses, save money on interest, and kind of reinvest in the company. So that was
Mm,
one side of things. But organically as well at that time, um, I kind of allowed them. I was like, I kind of saw it like move more and more into like, okay, where's all the money going? Where are we spending too much money? And I allowed me to kind of like learn the operational side of things too. So between those times, and again, around similar time, Amanda Randall, she's our VP of operations. She joined as an entry level in a dispatch perspective. So she was kind of coming at, I was kind of coming at things from a finance perspective. She started growing in as an operations perspective as to like, well, I saw where all the money was going. She was seeing where all the breakdowns were happening. So we kind
mm,
of like slowly came together to say like, hey, how do we tear this down? How do we do better? And then we really started focusing on the maintenance side of our facility. So, okay, we have new vehicles, invest in our fleet, and then, okay, now we have our maintenance side of things. So, how do we really focus on that to make that like a pillar of who we are?
mm,
And once we figured out that core, then like the other parts of the business started to shake together.
mm.
And yeah, it's funny. So, Amanda Randall, she's our vice president of operations now. So, yeah, her and I's passed to kind of the data of the company kind of started in very similar positions.
Oh, that's
But yeah,
cool.
really start at the ground level, right? Of learning that business
Yep.
and yeah, trying to go on from there. And it was interesting. You talk about the value and the challenge of coming in as like the join the family business is okay. Well, I know certain things, but I don't know other things. And okay, well, how do you fast track
Mm,
management skills? I think that is
yeah.
the biggest challenge is of joining the family business is like, okay, well, how do you fast track management skills in turn in like people skills?
Yeah.
Because, you get thrust into a role, you get given a role, right? So from a technical perspective, I knew how to be the CFO, but I didn't know how to be the CFO in terms of, managing people. How do you like like those inter people skills and how do you communicate with people? And how, because, most CFOs are, they would have 20 years of experience, right? So they've learned over time how to do that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think you know, learning and listening and trying to figure out from a people perspective and those communication side of things, how do you get there quickly? Joining the family business was something a bit of a challenge, a bit of a value as to, okay, well, we need to communicate with our people more. How do we get more people involved to streamline some of those processes? But yeah,
So how did
it,
you streamline that? Like what did you find worked to help you sort of beef up your management chops, in a short period of time?
short for time. And again, we got your hands dirty, right? Like it's trial by error. We kind of saw like, here are the problems. I was driving over to Moncton once a week to deal with operational things. We had some consultants involved who were like, brought some experts in, leaned on some
Mm,
people we had already around the table in terms of HR and different conversations. But yeah, like it's just roll up your sleeves and get in there and the first time you fire somebody is terrible and then it's terrible every time thereafter, but like you
yeah.
gotta you gotta
You
do it,
learn.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's only one way to learn it, and it's by doing it, and it's uncomfortable, and I still don't love conflict, right? This is not who I am as a nature, but that's part of the gig.
Yeah.
And the only way to get resolution sometimes is to go through the conflict. So
Yeah.
you learn how to deal with it and learn how to deal with it, but it's trial by error, right? And you
Yeah, yeah.
gotta cut your chops on it.
No, that's absolutely my experience as well. Um, Speaking of challenges and the conflict, I wanted to ask, and I know this is a bit of a leading question because I know the story about the challenges you guys went through during COVID, but could you speak a bit about that challenge you guys faced when everything shut down, travel stopped, tourism stopped, etc., and what that did to your business overall?
Yeah. like it's funny, like I definitely think of my career like in three parts, right? Like there was with the company, like there was the pre-COVID section, there's the COVID section, and then there's the after COVID part. And there's three very distinct parts of my like 11 years with the company. And I'll never forget, like that's, that March 2020, like I'll carry that for a long time. Like, my dad drove around to the offices in like the middle of March saying like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be like a 2 week thing. We're gonna get through it with everybody," right? Because that's what we were told. Like, hey, the guys, this is 2 weeks, nothing's gonna
Yep.
happen, all that stuff, right? Well, he did that on Tuesday, I think, and then was Friday. I drove around and said, "Sorry, everybody, but like a lot's changed in the last 48 hours, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't going to be a 2 week thing. We're going to have to we're going to have to evolve, and we're going to have to figure this out."
Yeah.
And then the next week, I was laying off people on Zoom calls,
Yeah.
and because I couldn't travel off of PEI anymore,
Yeah.
and laying off people who'd worked for us for 15 years, and just because of the situation. And we prioritized as much as we could and try to keep as many people on, but like longer it went,
Yeah.
we had to get in survival mode.
Yeah.
And my line is that people are told to stay at home and avoid confined spaces, and our business is to move people in
Yeah.
confined spaces. So
Yeah.
like I don't know if there's anyone that was harder hit during COVID than we were, but the first step was about survival. Okay, like how are we going to get through this? Which, what about our banks, the stakeholders, and all the government programs? So once we got through that perspective, and then it was okay, well, how are we going to use this time? Like, what are we going to do with this time? What are we going to do to be able to maximize this time and like not have this be a wasted opportunity? And Luke, looking back now, I could tell you that the time we had during COVID is probably one of the best things that ever happened to us as a company.
Uh,
Um, Debt aside, we're still paying back debt, and financially, we're still affected by it. But from an operations perspective and a pathway going forward of where we're at as a company, we're in a much better place.
uh,
And it's because we took that opportunity, we reinvented ourselves, we reinvented our processes, and came out of it in a much more sustainable way
uh,
in terms of how many people, like how we dispatch our drivers, how do we interact with each other, how do we, like, just those core business practices. Because we hit pause, we had the capacity, we're okay, well, we can reinvent them. And we didn't let that opportunity go to waste. And I think that that's my like reflection on COVID is like, like everything in business in general, like everything happens for a reason. And, how do you make the most of it? We made the most out of COVID, based on being opportunistic. Like, for example, we signed a deal with Prevost. They're one of the two main motor coach manufacturers in Canada. Sorry, there's two. Sorry, got this part. They are there's two motor coach manufacturers in Canada, Prevost in Quebec and MCI out west. And we cut a deal to buy 50 motor coaches with Prevost in 2021 at a time when people weren't buying motor coaches. We wanted to say, hey, coming out of this, we want to have supply, we want to show strength. And we were able to negotiate that deal. And parts of it were just because of COVID, and because of being able to be a little bit ahead of things. And then coming out of COVID, there was a huge supply issue in terms of being able to get access to motor coaches.
right.
And we had them because we had done that deal. And our maritime bus network, we were able to make, yeah, like our maritime bus network kind of got rationalized a little bit because of COVID, which was decisions we wouldn't have made if it wouldn't have happened. And we had our, pre-COVID, our company was primarily based out of Moncton in terms of the operational hub. Well, we moved a lot of that to Halifax when we grew it back up. And, that was the right business decision. So I think yeah, like every opportunity, like everything, yeah, there's challenges in business, bad stuff happens, but yeah, take a breath and, figure out a plan. and how do we make the most of the situation. And again, I'm looking back in terms of what would have happened through our business over those few years and where we are now. I'm really like we're really excited about where we are as a company today, and
Mm,
part of that is because we were able to make some fundamental changes out of COVID.
right. And was there ever a moment during that, early tumultuous period where you were like, I don't know if we're going to survive, or did you pretty quickly figure out survival mode, or what was the mindset like?
We, we pretty quickly figured out that our banks didn't want our buses back. So
Fair.
we owed them. We pretty quickly figured out that the banks had trust in us. The
Yep.
banks wanted to work with us, and they knew that the best way forward for them to get their money back was to ride out this situation and to work with us as the Cassidys
Right.
to get there. The federal government programs in terms of the wage support and the rent support, were huge. We, us and other companies wouldn't be here. Those programs wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
So yeah, no, there was always enough going on that we never thought we were going to completely lose it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it definitely is that concept of like, you know, the banks needed us to get through it, right? That was the best way for them to get through it. And that
Yep.
concept of being too big to fail, like, yeah, they didn't want our buses back. So
Yeah.
we, we were able to kind of work our way through it. And, but yeah, it was tough.
What,
There's no doubt about
what
it.
what did it teach you about yourself as a leader going through that? You said you've come out into a new section
Yeah.
after COVID. How are you as a different leader in this new section?
I think it just the growth of it through it, right? Like I talk about an MBA or PhD in management, like experience different things. How do we not coming out with like 2022, like we didn't think we were gonna have any business. Then all of a sudden now we have all this business, right? So like not only do we manage the down, but then we had to manage the up quickly, right? Because when the taps came on, Luke, they came on quickly. So like,
Mm,
how do you hire people? How do you do this job? And how do you do that? Is it definitely shaped me in terms of being like the level of involvement I have with the business, knowing what's going on with the business, and making sure that we have the adequate resources there so the team can do what they need to do. But yeah, it really um, it really showed me that, hey, you can do a lot
mm,
when you need to. Things can be hard, but you got to stick together as a family and as a management team to get through things. We're creative people and we're hardworking and we're opportunistic in what we did.
mm.
And yeah, like it proved to me that, yeah, it just, yeah, it proved to me that you can do things, right? You proved to me that you have to be able to sit back, see what's in front of you, make decisions, right? You can't worry about what you can't control. You got to control what you can control and keep
Yep.
going.
When did you take on the president role? What year?
June 2019.
Okay, so you so you took over and went straight into the fire.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
June 2019, I took over. September 2019, we purchased Absolute Charters.
Yeah.
So our biggest competitor or the bus business of Dennis Campbell and Ambassadors in Halifax. So
Yeah.
yeah, in the fall of yes, we bought out a major shareholder partner of our company, and we bought our largest competitor in 2019. So we, as I say, if you ever see me pushing all the chips onto a poker table at a casino, you should take yours back because it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
We didn't time that one well,
That's
but
hilarious. But
at the same time, as much as we didn't time it well, like we got through it.
yeah.
If we were the bus company, we were the industry in Nova Scotia. We got connected with the Nova Scotia stakeholders. With me as the president role, it fast tracked me to be in the face of things. It fast tracked me to be in the involvement of the people. Now we're hiring back people. We're hiring back. I'm hiring back people. I let the people go. Right. So
Mm,
again, glass half full reaction of it. It probably fast tracked my role. Um, and people seeing me as the president as instead of my father because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was running our automation business at the exact same time. I took over in 2019, and I went through almost the exact same experience. And prior to COVID, there was this sort of like, well, who's this new guy? What about the old guy who's, the previous CEO, who's a founder of the business and still a shareholder? And then as soon as COVID happened, it was sort of like a galvanizing moment where I was
Yeah,
like, all right, we're in this ship together, whether we like it or not. Let's figure this out. So
right. Here you
uh,
go.
I I totally hear that. Um, so you spoke a bit about your family having to come together for it. Could you speak a bit about, you're a president, you work with two brothers, you said?
Yeah.
Um, how do you manage that dynamic working with your brothers, and not allowing the family element to spill over too much? I'm sure it's impossible
Yeah.
to completely contain it, but how do you find that balance?
Like that balance is definitely it's a work in progress. I think it's something that you have to work at because if you don't work at it, it's going to go poorly. And I think that it is a challenge when you have, three brothers. We all have different personalities. We all have different skill sets. We all are accountants by trade, but if you look at the three of us, we definitely have different skills. We have different skill sets. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. But the three of us kind of together, we all kind of complement each other in different ways. And I think it's important that um, we need to step back sometimes as to, okay, well, you know, we have to respect what each other brings to the table. We have to respect each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. And, where you got to be there to complement each other to make it work.
Mm,
I do think that my father is still very much in the mix. When he's around, like he calls space babe, like he knows what's going on. Yes, the day-to-day stuff is kind of passed on, but when it looks at the big decisions, when we're spending money, when we're doing major acquisitions, he knows what's going on. And um ultimately, so like, there is that kind of safety net right now of like there's a tiebreaker vote in terms of like, my father being there. So, like, what does that look like down the road, right? Like, how do we manage that dynamic down the road, going forward? So that's something that, as a family, the estate planning and the structure and all that's there, but like that governance model and how do we work together and going forward is something that we're kind of working through together now. And I think that yeah, that's a really important piece, and I think that if we don't come up with a strong governance piece, then there's definitely risks to like any family business, um, especially one where there's 3 people working in it. So, yeah,
mhm.
that's something that we're working through now as to, that governance piece, but it's if you ask my mom, her number one goal is to have a close knit family. Like her priority is to have a family that has Christmas together. We get together for, have those family moments. We were a very close family growing up. And so, how do we do that? Make sure we respect that and support that going forward. And yeah, it takes work. I think it's something that you have to actively try and say, hey, how are we going to do this? And you have to put some safety nets in place, I think, in order to make sure that if things are going sideways, that you can get them back on the roads sooner rather than later. Because, yeah, ultimately we're a family first, and we want to make sure that we can, Christmas and summer barbecues and cottage, right? Like, and when we're together, like, um, if my dad and I are walking back from the beach on a Sunday, there's a little bit of business that gets talked, but when we're together as a family, it's we try our best to it's family time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we try and balance that out. But there's definitely yeah, the being in a family business, there's great parts of it, but there's also challenges. And you got to acknowledge the challenges because you're not alone in those challenges. And how do you make sure you structure things and have people and there's experts that deal with this stuff, so how do you get the support you need to make sure that you can be successful in family businesses And Atlantic Canada has some tremendous business success stories,
Yeah.
and the economy here is built on family businesses. So, I think it's vital that we continue to foster family businesses and have them passed down from one generation to the next, so those businesses stay family businesses, and that we can have a vibrant family business economy and a family business group and network in Atlantic Canada.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well said. Um, One of the things speaking of governance, one of the things that I've toyed with, and we haven't done it yet. I have the benefit of, we have a third party CEO that I work alongside. So we do have that non-family member, but speaking of governance, one of the things that I've thought about is in the long term, should we have some non-family members at a board level? Have you ever considered anything like that just to get, as you said, some safety nets in or other perspectives?
No, we've never done a board yet. I've thought about it. I've always kind of toyed with it in the back of my mind about what that would look like. Is it something we should do? Um, I also feel like we're at a bit of a point of our company's perspective now where, especially with our recent acquisition, we're getting bigger. We're going like, how do we look at this, the like my lens of our company, like, okay, well, how now it's more of a group of companies,
Mm,
right? And how does each one of those companies fit inside of the bigger group?
mm,
So putting in some, I think, going forward, we need to think about how do we structure things and put things in place that allows ourselves to look at it as more of a group than
mm,
just like, oh, a company.
yeah,
Which I think maybe gets to that point of like governance and a board and yeah, a little bit
yeah,
more structure that way.
yeah. No, no, for sure. That's we went through that same discussion when we started our family office, and we were like, okay, this is more than just an operating business. Now we sort of have to figure out how do we look at it holistically. So totally get that. Um, just running tight on time here, so I just had a couple more questions. Um, One was the thing that's in the news right now is, of course, the impact of the Trump tariffs on Canadians going down to Florida and stuff like
Yeah.
that. We're early in the tourist season here. It's only the middle of June, but have you seen any impact on the Canadian tourist market so far? Of people coming up here from south of the border or from other places, or is it pretty much steady state?
So so with our charter business, so in like March and April, a big segment of the business or a chunk of our business that we do then is bringing Atlantic Canadians to the United States, New York, Nashville, places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like that business like disappeared quickly. Like it fell off a cliff
Oh
based on
wow.
the sediments and that type of thing. But in the last, like I would say, in May, yeah, end of April into May, we had tour operators that went. They had people that wanted to go and try, and the reception that people had when they went to some of these places, they're like, "Oh, thank you for coming." Like, "Oh, I can't believe what's happening. We're
Mm,
sorry. Here's,"
mm-hmm.
like the reception that people had when they went to the States was tremendous.
Mm,
Um, and so hopefully as time passes, right, like things we'll see how that market rebounds. But the early numbers in our bookings for people coming, from the United States into Canada and Canadians staying within Canada is strong. I think we're in store for a strong tourism season across the board here
mm,
in Atlantic Canada. And we're excited, like the cruise ship folks that are arriving in Halifax and in Charlottetown and in the region, you know, sales are strong in terms of the number of people on the board, the number of passengers on the ships, and they're really, doing well that way. And our buses of, inbound tour operators, there's more people on the bus this year than there was last year. So hopefully this works. And talking with other tour operators about like bookings year over year, like, yeah, no, look, I think we're in for a strong year from a tourism perspective.
all right. And can you tell me more about the recent acquisition you just did in the cruise business?
Yeah. So on June 1st, we announced that we purchased um, the cruise division from Ambassadors. So the division that was responsible for all the logistics and tour products for shore excursions. So Dennis Campbell with Ambassadors started in that business like 38 years ago. And our family has had a long standing relationship with him dating back 20 plus years of doing business together and motor coach space. And he approached us in the fall about looking to retire and how we would be like the natural fit in terms of who he'd want to sell to. His team that was in place, and wanted to make sure that, his values and this business, like he calls it his baby, right? Went to someone that would be able to carry on the legacy and, support his team and support the customers that he's grown to date. And so, yeah, we worked through it, went back and forth, came up with a deal that worked. And then announced that in the end of, June 1st, we took over. So we're really excited to be able to add that team to ours. Everyone that was working came a part of it. That was a huge part of it. Like us being able to do it is the team that was in place there, with Tasha and Paula, and co, to be able to do the day-to-day space. So we're really excited about being able to support them. And, they were our biggest, their jobs are, as when the ship pulls in to Halifax, we employ the guides, we put the guides on the bus, we put they rent the motor coach from Coach Atlantic, and they package the tour with the lobster roll and the missions, and we go to Citadel Hill and Haggis Cove, show off what Nova Scotia has to offer um, as part of that. And so, Coach Atlantic's biggest customer was the motor coaches for the cruise business. And so it was a natural fit for us to kind of make this progression. And it was definitely a worry of ours of like, okay, if Dennis, wanted to retire, he had interest in terms of like international cruise companies that were interested in buying it, as also some like financial buyers. And, we stepped back and thought of like, okay, well, this is such an important industry for Atlantic Canada, and having an Atlantic Canadian company be the ones to represent it and be invested in it to make sure it carries on going forward just seemed like it was something that we needed to do and we wanted to do. And yeah, so June 1st, we kind of officially made that announcement. And so, yeah, we're a couple weeks into it, learning lots. There's been a good transition so far. Great team in place. And yeah, so we're really excited about what that brings, and brings us into more the tourism side of the business versus just being the transportation side of it. And so with Dennis and his company, we purchased the cruise division, and we call it Ambassadors Cruise. He's maintaining ownership of the Harbor Hoppers and the Tall Ship Silva and a couple of those water products, and some other retail tours that they've always done. So yeah, we didn't take over the whole thing.
Mhm.
Just we purchased the cruise division with that looks after the shore excursions in, Halifax, Sydney, Nova Scotia, Charlottetown, PEI, St. John, New Brunswick, as well as various ports in Newfoundland.
Very cool. And is it fair to say this is a bit of a different business than what you're used to historically? And with that, how do you think about, learning this new aspect of your business?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different, right? Because it's all about um, okay, packaging tours, developing tours that are ultimately they're going to sell onto the cruise lines that gets bought by the passengers. So very slow and steady, I guess, is what I've learned the last 2 weeks. Yes, I have ideas. And like, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? And I think that I have to be very cautious about what I say. And, I want to learn. We're getting into the like this is the season, right? The operational season of, June through the end of October is when most of the ships arrive. So yeah, this is definitely gonna be a year of like learning and understanding. And I was fortunate enough that, we rushed to get things done and announced before June 1st because the this region's annual meeting for like they call it the Canada New England Cruise Symposium was hosted in Halifax, Nova Scotia at the beginning of the month. So I was able to go to that as the new owner of Ambassadors and meet all of our customers, stakeholders from all the different ports, CEOs of ports, and the different operators, and really like I had 12 months worth of introductory meetings in 4 days. And so it really
Wow.
was an eye-opening experience in terms of, how many people and all the different stakeholders in this ecosystem that are needed in order to make sure it grows. And, you need the cruise lines, you need the ports, you need us to all be making the necessary investments so that the industry can grow. And it's a growing industry, it's a great industry, and it brings a lot of economic spin-off to our region. Um, the most recent studies that were done, I think it's close to $400 million in economic spinoff that's done based on the cruise arrivals into our region. So that's an amazing amount of money our um, for our economy. And you know, people that come off the ships, yes, they go on tours, and yeah, and we drive them to places outside of urban areas, outside of the urban centers, so they're spending their money in more rural locations. And then there's a bunch of people that don't even get on our vehicles to go on tours. They just get off the boat and they start walking around downtown Halifax or downtown Charlottetown, and they're buying coffee and ice cream and souvenirs, right? Like, and experiencing the amazing, yeah, we have some amazing experiences and an amazing place to show off here in Atlantic Canada. And we're
Yeah.
really excited to be that flag bearer now and this legacy of ambassadors that was created in the cruise industry. And how do we keep it going forward?
Yeah. No, it's a very cool strategic acquisition. That, you're getting a bit out of your comfort zone, but I can completely understand the strategic value to your overall business. So my hat's off to you. One last question on it. You've gone through a bunch of acquisitions over time. You did the one right before COVID. Your dad had done a bunch of acquisitions, sort of rolling up the industry. Now you've done this one. What advice would you have for an entrepreneur if they are looking to start doing some acquisitions? How do you prepare yourself as a
Sure.
team and an organization?
I think that I would start off by saying you need to get help, right? There's some great professionals out there that help you through the process. In terms of not only like how to structure deals, how to negotiate deals, as well as like just being the ones to keep things moving so like you can get there. So yeah, having a good team of professionals of accountants and lawyers and different M&A people around you definitely helps. Um, I but from a that's some practical advice. But from the entrepreneur yourself, they never come along at the perfect time. Like, you're never ready to do it.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, well, mate, we should do that next year because, oh, we need to do this, this, and this now. They never come along at the right time. So you really have to be mindful of, hey, if this is the right opportunity, it is the right opportunity. And well, do you know what? We're going to have to figure it out.
Mhm.
And, this is me as an accountant saying this. You very rarely get them as for the price you wanna get them for. Like, if you're buying something that's worth something, if you're a pure accountant, I don't know if you'd ever buy anything. And, you have to say, "Hey, how do you make the deal work? Yes, we gotta pay for something." And if you're paying for something, usually, like, okay, you can get the benefits of it once you get it into your company, and how do you streamline it, and how do you fold it in? Because the businesses that we bought that we thought we were getting a deal on and, oh, this is a good price and type of thing, you end up paying for it down the road because there was stuff that was happening. Like, there was just stuff that came up, right? The equipment wasn't maintained the way you thought it was, or this wasn't happening the way you thought it was. So yeah, it's as if you were a pure accountant and a pure business valuator, I'm not sure how many deals you would really get done. So you have to balance the entrepreneur and the accountant in the room in terms of getting deals done.
And the last question, your business has experimented in the EV space before. I read online. Where didn't you guys have some electric buses before? Oh, really?
No,
Okay, I read about.
we had
Yeah, that's what I read
yeah,
about was a pilot.
we had like a demo one here for like a couple days. Yeah.
Oh,
No.
okay. So that was it. Wasn't a. I saw that there was a pilot that you guys had, and I thought that was maybe for a longer time period. Where my
No.
question was going to go is the world of buses, is it going to stay gas powered for the long term, you think, or are there other hybrid buses or EV buses or hydrogen buses that, are
Yeah.
on the horizon?
So our closest piece to the electric space is definitely with transit in Charlottetown. And, transit agencies around Canada, you know, coming out of COVID, they had the last 3 or 4 years, they had these big electric plans, but they also ran into, with all the immigration that happens, like ridership took off. So there's this perfect storm where everyone wanted to go electric, but people needed buses quickly. The timeline to buy electric and have the infrastructure and make your plans extended. The price of electric vehicles got so expensive, even from a federal, provincial, municipal funding model, like they just couldn't keep up.
Hmm.
So, some of the big agencies are doing electric pieces, but Toronto TTC has like 4,000 buses, right? Like that's a massive, massive amount of
Hmm.
infrastructure needed to charge that and how that goes. So whereas, you know, yes, that vehicle produces carbon when it burns diesel, but how much carbon is it saving when there's 70 people on board, when there's 60 people on board and they're not driving? So like when it comes to that transit space of like, okay, how do you what's the best way to save greenhouse gas emissions? Well, have an amazing transit system so people take transit and leave their cars home, opposed to
Hmm.
worrying about what that vehicle's consuming. And with diesel technology and emissions capture and everything that's happening with like diesel engines, they're a lot cleaner. They're essentially, yeah, the EPA in them is amazing compared to what they were historically.
Hmm.
So the cost of things, the technology, like 5, 10 over the next 5 years, I don't see myself purchasing a commercial EV vehicle. 10 years from now, maybe, but
Hmm.
yeah, 5 years, I would say no.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I mean, everything you see about the EV market, it seems that there was a lot of optimism and stuff is extended out. So
Then yeah,
that's not surprising.
yeah,
Um, all right, that brings us to the end of our time. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. It's super interesting, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. This is Beyond the Family Business Podcast. Take care.